Thanks for letting me join this afternoon. I think I've actually got the worst spot because, yes, it's right after lunch, but you got to hear a great accent, and now you have to hear mine. Now, I'm happy to be here. First time at Loop HR, actually first time in London. I'm coming back with my wife in June, so if anybody has any pub or restaurant recommendations, please pass them my way. I'm here to share a little bit about, one of our other talent development offerings, and it's really around our global exchange program here with Kirin. So, Bill Kelley, I'm the global talent development lead for the organization, and based out of the Princeton, New Jersey office in the U.S. Before I jump too far into the actual program, I do want to share a little bit about Kirin. Typically, because when you mention to somebody, I work for Kirin, the response is, who? Understand. But it's really important because it's our why. If I want to bring Simon Sinek into the discussion, we want to start with the why we do things. This is really about building the life. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Really thinking about what does Kirin do? And it's really about bringing that life-changing value and making people smile. Sian mentioned it's not just about patients. We want to make sure, as an organization, our employees, our stakeholders, society that we interact with feels valued and we make them smile. And really it starts to get built around our core values: integrity, innovation, teamwork, and commitment to life. That's the reason why we do things like the Global Exchange Program. And really when we think about it, we're trying to address those unmet medical needs. We're trying to make sure that we're focused on the trust of society and the stakeholders that we serve in the regions we serve, and also thinking about healthcare needs. As a company, we have a strong legacy. We're built on over 70 years of a Japanese heritage and culture around this. So well established where, some of these things we pull through in this legacy and our learnings. Now, another thing with Kirin, I mentioned to my doctor that I'm moving to Kirin. And as a healthcare professional, he said, the beer company? It's not wrong, but now when we add in the legacy of the brewing side, well over 100 years of legacy that we bring into what we're doing. As a snapshot, we are a global company. We're in 50 markets. We have just under 6,000 employees. I think the slides were due before our financial results for 2024 came out, but 442 billion yen. It's a lot of money. And we saw increased growth in that, but even though we're a Japanese-based company, we are a global company, a global specialty pharmaceutical company. And about 65% of our revenue in 2023 actually came outside of the Japanese market. So we are truly embracing that global side of things. Our operating model, we're really focused on what can we be strong with internally, but where does it make sense to do collaborations or license outward, do out-licensing, look for those external initiatives where we can stay focused on our main disease areas of bone and mineral, hemo-onc, and rare disease, but also investing in drug discovery technologies. So we want to focus on what's core to us, but we want to make sure we're bringing value through in whatever ways we can partner with others. We think about how does HR play into this story for Vision 2030, right? That's our guide. It's built off of our core principles, our values, and how do we bring that through? So we have a few pillars that we focus on. One is around how do we bring out potential and develop individuals throughout the organization. This global exchange program that I'll talk about, that's just one of those ways. We also want to focus on enterprise leadership and enterprise mindset. We're growing. We need to figure out how to make sure our leaders are making decisions that are best for the entire organization and not just focused on their lane and their lane only. Team is huge, so we want to make sure our teams are culturally effective and also high-performing teams. So building into how do we make sure our teams are inclusive, diverse, working well, and bringing the best out of their individual members and going in the right direction. As I mentioned, over 70 years, we have a strong culture, and we want to make sure we expand that. Many of us haven't had the opportunity to spend our entire career with one company outside of Japan. So how do we make sure we're bringing that legacy and culture in everywhere? Because there's so many great learnings. So we've really focused on a set of leadership behaviors and actions called our Kabe-Goe principles, which is tied to our core values, but it's how do you make those words, those values, actionable as an individual. We're also looking at things like digital transformation. How do we integrate digitally? We've heard AI at least 10 times today. I think we've got another 20 coming tomorrow. But how do we have integration through digitalization? How are we using the tools to help us bring analytics, make smart decisions, and fact-based decisions so we can really focus on things like return on investment? That's a difficult one sometimes, especially in that people space. So the Global Exchange Program itself, it's a talent development program. As I talk you through how we do it, and maybe in our discussions later, it's not really about do it this exact way. There's elements of this, whether you're a big company, small company, you can bring in elements of it. It's also not a program that's highly reliant on technology. So even some of the questions and discussion we're having about can you scale this? Yeah, even in a smaller organization, you can scale things like this. So what is it? Global Exchange Program, or GEP. I'll use acronyms. If I use too many, please let me know. I was in the military before joining the corporate environment, so everything is about acronyms. But it really is a talent development program focused on giving individuals the opportunity to learn by doing. If you follow the 70-20-10 learning model, that's where that impact is. So it's short-term assignments, on-the-job learning, by dedicating themselves to a project, a business needs required project, but a project that they can then showcase their skills and their expertise on. So again, about 3 months. It's really meant to be able to give people opportunity to leave their region, go into a different market, get the culture, but also it could be different functions that you're going to as well, not just different regions. A lot of benefits to it. One, it's about building our succession pipeline of leaders. We're giving people the opportunity to learn these things, take it back, and hopefully what we're developing is somebody who has a bigger growth or global mindset on things, a different view on things. The chance to have been put into a position where they really had to overcome some obstacles. Now, we support them, and the teams support them, but let's face it, it's a lot of change, moving to a different country, working on a short-term project, trying to learn all this in just 3 months and come out successful. So they come away with resilience. They come away with different skills they've learned in that interaction. Plus, it's about their career development. So they get to come back. They've gained exposure, both through the project themselves, where they wouldn't have had the opportunity to interact with this other group, but oftentimes they also get exposure through senior leadership. Talk a little bit how we do a capstone at the end where it's really a presentation on the project, and senior leaders get some of this exposure to them. We talk about what population we're targeting. So usually it's individual contributors, maybe first-line managers, those who are still early enough in the career where they can benefit from this exposure, but not so junior that they haven't got some of the foundational skills that are needed to operate in a corporate environment. So I think maybe, Sally, it was around that band 7, band 6 type of thing that you were showing. We're going through that too, no worries. How's this process work? So, I mean, it's a year-long process. You think for a 3-month assignment, you'd have a lot of breathing room in between, but it is a year-long process. We may get a couple weeks in December where we can take a little bit of a break. But it really starts off with sourcing the needs. So going out to the business, the regional executive teams, the global executive teams, and finding and scoping projects that, A, the business benefits from, but B, we can actually apply criteria to ensure that the applicants get exposure and get the opportunity to work on this and be successful. So that's coming in now. I was just reading one a few minutes ago being submitted from here out, and it's all around resilience, corporate and organizational resilience. So interested to see where we're going with that. Deadline for the submissions is coming. And of course, like all of you, I'm sure when you set a deadline, you have to remind them, you have to ask for extensions, that'll come. But once we gather all of these in, our internal team will then apply a matrix, a rubric, to rate this project. It's got to meet certain criteria. It's got to be achievable. It's got to have a clear business outcome. It's got to be where the team is ready to support somebody coming in. They can't just bring in labor and then forget about them. They have to show and demonstrate they're going to be there to support that team member as well. So we'll apply this matrix, and that allows us to prioritize and rank. So should we have more project submissions than we have budget for, we can decide what order. From there, it really is about sourcing the applicants. So we'll go out with global messages, regional messages, and encourage people to apply. It's really open to everybody. Now, there's criteria that the participants or the applicants need to meet, so we'll balance that. We'll screen them. We'll go through an interview process and work with the managers to ensure they're applying things like cultural intelligence when it comes to working with different groups, and also helping them to remove bias around their interview process. It'll go through that selection process. Around mid-year, we'll make our decisions on who's going where, and then the logistical fun starts. Work permits, visas, travel, all of those things that come with moving somebody from one spot to another spot for 3 months and supporting them through that. As we get into the nice time of the year, September is usually when we kick it off. That's when those projects start. They'll have September, October, November to deliver on the projects. And then it does cap out with a presentation back to the organization. Our internal team will then try to catch our breaths briefly and then do an after-action review and talk about what worked, what do we need to change for next year. And there's been a lot of change and improvements in that. So you can see we've kind of been doing this for a few years now. Started with just 3 positions in 2022. All 3 positions were based in the UK, so the sending organizations was Japan to here. And year over year, we've seen more interest. We've seen more growth. To this point this year, we're looking at budgeting for between 11 and 13 of these projects. We're expecting applicants from all regions, and we expect all the regions to host the different projects. This is just a sampling of what have some of these projects been. So the 20 projects we've hosted so far, just kind of high level. I'll say if you want firsthand experience or the thoughts of what does it feel like to go through one of these, Matt, you want to raise your hand? So Matt took part in the global talent acquisition process one in 2023. So you can needle him if you want more details on his experience. But these projects have ranged all over the place, from building out KPIs and a dashboard on how our medical affairs team focuses on the patient-centric side of things, to building governance documents to help us prepare for how we are going to implement AI. What's going to be our safeguards? How are we going to make sure we're doing this in the right way? So a lot of the projects, because they're only 3 months long, we're not talking about end-to-end finishing a huge thing. There's usually certain elements of a greater need that they deliver on. Our role is to really help ensure that we're focused on them being successful in that time. Some of the benefits we've seen out of this: increased engagement. So when we think about development and being at a company where you're thought of, you're cared about, there's opportunities, we see a lot of engagement come out of this. Long before we were ready to announce the positions, we've been having people asking us, when are you doing this? I have a position or a project I want worked on, and we have others saying, I want to apply for something. So we see the engagement from senior leaders all the way down to individuals. The diverse destination side of things. So I think we have a little bit of a running joke. If Australia posts a project, many of us don't care what the project is, we're raising our hand to go. But it really is about getting that exposure to maybe some of the smaller clusters or smaller areas, the non-headquarters based areas, to ensure we're sharing talent across and getting that view. I think we were having a discussion at some point during the lunch around how do we get that exposure, non-headquarters exposure. We are looking at the equity side of things, ensuring we have diverse slate of candidates applying, and also ensuring there's opportunity for everybody. We are a company that wants to focus on inclusion, making sure everybody wants to come to work and feel safe there in being who they are. So we make sure that we're exposing that side of things. The global mindset, it's huge. It's huge for a company to really break away from just being siloed regions to really thinking about how do things work throughout the organization. So it benefits the individual, but it also benefits the organizations that are hosting them, because they get to see, how do I give feedback to individuals who are from a different culture where maybe direct or indirect feedback are the cultural norms. Openness to discussion. It just increases that mindset. And also career advancement. How do we give these people opportunities to demonstrate what they can do and then track their progression afterward? And we've seen some great things happen where people have done the short-term assignments and then really one day learned, okay, I really enjoy being in that area, and that group wants them to come back. So we've seen them where we've turned short-term assignments into long-term assignments. Now, it's not always butterflies and rainbows. There's challenges that happen along the way. There's things you have to deal with. We've definitely faced a number of them. How do we ensure when participants are being managed, we're being culturally sensitive to that and knowing the expectations? Lots of things around daily allowance, cost of living when they're in a different area. How do we do that when there's different rules in different organizations or in different regions? How are we ensuring we're being equitable in it and not being too administratively cumbersome to doing that? Career development. So how do we track causality of somebody going through this to that promotion they got or that growth that they got? Not always an easy one. You can get some coincidence sometimes, but it is difficult to say, yes, because of this happened. So how do we start to get creative around that? Visas, work permits, housing, all of those things are really, really complicated, and thankfully we have some people who are much more knowledgeable than I am working on that. Also, performance reviews. You're taking somebody out of their day job for 3 months. How do you ensure that's accounted for at their year-end review? Both the impact they had there and their home managers, not forgetting about them. So a lot of the things we've implemented, we did work on how do we remove some of that unconscious bias or help to mitigate that. Stress tracking, keeping up with these people. How stressful it must be to move from one country to another country. You're in this project, family things going on back at home. How do we routinely check in with them to make sure they feel supported and that they're feeling good? We put in some global portal communications, one place where everybody can go, which helps remove some of the burden on the regional teams who are helping work on this. And then allowances. This was a huge one. How do we make sure we're getting them the money they need for living expenses without being overly burdensome to expense tracking systems and all that? So we've gotten some harmonized things that are well established in all of the regions now at this point. That said, there's plenty of room for growth and improvement. How do we integrate this? How do we make sure we're looking at succession planning as part of this? How do we keep the communications going? How do we, now that we've done 20 of these projects, how do we get the alumni back together and engage them to help them be a part of things and not feel forgotten in this? And then how do we expand it? Should we expand it? Does it have to only be this 3-month period each year? Or can we make this more of an open environment where it can be applied at any point? Lots of things there for us to work on. The HR team gets a lot out of this, though, as well. This is a team. This is a team, and I cannot take any credit for anything this team has done because I'm really just getting into the weeds of it now. But these team members have really had the opportunity to come together. They've gotten to expand outside of what their typical day job is. So if they're in a COE or if they're a business partner, they get a sneak peek into things like the project management, the visas and work permitting processes, and different aspects of HR that they might not have had exposure to. For our non-English speakers, native English speakers, Because English is our business language, it gives them more opportunity to interact in a safe environment, a supported environment with the team. And also it's building that global network. I love making friends in other locations. Joss and I have known each other for a long time, but never actually met each other in person. You know? It's really that opportunity to help expand that global network, especially for those who are in careers where they tend to be very siloed and focused on one thing and one thing only. So there's a lot to this. I'll be happy to answer questions, and I know Sian will have my back on that too. But you know, when we think about Kyowa Kirin and why we're doing this, our president and CEO just last week had a great quip around Mount Fuji. It's not the tallest mountain. It's not even in the top 10. It's somewhere around like 35. But if you show a picture of Mount Fuji to anybody, more than likely they're going to recognize that as Mount Fuji because of its distinct nature, because of its beauty, because of the way it's been a part of the Japanese heritage and culture in so many aspects. And really, that's what Kyowa Kirin is aiming to be, the Mount Fuji. We're not trying to be Mount Everest. We're not trying to be mega pharma. We want to be a unique company that has its own beauty and way of developing people. And this global exchange program is really just one of the ways that we're investing in that, trying to be creative, try not to be overly reliant on systems, but still be scalable and make it easy. And that was 0 right there. I was right on time.